You're listening to the Journey Podcast. We all experience grief and loss at some point in our lives. How can we find healing through this journey? Find out more in today's episode. Some listeners may be triggered by this content, and listener discretion is advised. Hi, I'm Petra Brunbauer, and with decades of experience with sadness, pain, anxiety, and stress, I finally figured out how to leave all that behind. And this podcast shows you how to break free permanently so you can reclaim your sanity and find the self-esteem and energy to go after the life you desire. With real talk about mental health, holistic healing, and the tough journey of coming out the other end. This is the Journey Podcast. Welcome to today's episode. Loss is an inevitable part of life. Some people experience loss as children, maybe losing a parent or sibling. Others may feel loss as they get older. Maybe they go through a tough breakup, lose an important job, experience a divorce, or lose a loved one. At some point, we usually all know what loss feels like. We don't all grieve the same, so our experiences are as individual as we are. We can also get stuck in grief, depending on our situation. Today, we explore grief, loss, and healing through the experiences that can push us to our physical and emotional limits. Dr. Heather Browne has been a psychotherapist and a mother for 25 years. She loves both roles deeply. She is excellent at helping people change sticky thought processes and see the other side of challenging situations. Her specialties are couples communication and intimacy, grief and loss, spirituality and faith, and transforming lives into expressions of beauty and joy. There is no stuck. We just see it that way. Changing our perspective changes our experience. Dr. Heather is incredibly grateful for her sharp mind, fast wit, and massive amount of energy and light. She is here to show you that you can lighten and enlighten your load, or just dump it. She uses metaphors, storytelling, imagery, and humor in her work. Dr. Heather has been published in Inc. magazine, Insider magazine, The Toronto Sun, Psychology Today, Focus on the Family's Thriving Family, Light Plus Life, and hundreds of journals and reviews. She was selected out of thousands to be the relationship expert on Daybreak OC for a television season and has been interviewed several times on ABC 7 News. She's currently creating an online communications course. Her greatest desire is to support her clients in drawing closer to their true self, their inner wisdom, and their purpose. Our lives are an amazing adventure and blessing, given freely to us to explore and to share love, our uniqueness, and our stories. She's excited to encourage and empower you in sharing yours. Dr. Heather offers a weekly newsletter packed with tips and techniques to improve relationships and frequent workshops. Let's meet Dr. Heather Browne. Hi, Dr. Heather. It's so great to have you on the podcast. I've been looking forward to getting to chat with you because grief and loss is a hugely important topic for mental well-being and holistic healing. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And to start, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and how you got onto this path?
Sure. Like so many people who are in the coaching and the therapy realm, I grew up with a family that had a lot of struggles and challenges. My mother was a paranoid schizophrenic and she killed herself when I was 16. And that's really where my interest in helping others and trying to come alongside someone who's struggling or suffering really came into play. She was pivotal in me looking at how do we live? How hard is it for us to live? And what are some of the choices that we make in our life or even life itself? And so, though my mom didn't let me into the places where I had tried to enter to support and help her as deeply as she needed because of the challenges that she had, I really wanted to offer a different option to other people and to bring as much kindness and compassion and love and support and wisdom as I could. So that began that part of my journey. And it's just never stopped. It's just never stopped, which has been a gift and a blessing. And when people are going through grief, the other side is that they have loved dearly. It's a beautiful place to come into that sacred, holy space with someone, help them realize that, and then also help them learn how to go through the grief in ways that can really honor them, honor the person or the situation that has changed, and find what life can be in a different way now.
Mhm. Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate that. And as I'm listening to you, I am wondering a little bit that we might see grief and loss in relation to losing a loved one, and that might be a very common form of it. But there are also many other things in life that can actually cause us to feel grief or loss. So let's talk a little bit about some different things that could happen for someone to experience grief and loss. And it might not always involve the death of a loved one. For example, in the last few years, as we've been going through the health situation globally, a lot of people may have felt a sense of grief and loss. So, how does that tie into how you work with people when it comes to those kind of situations and feelings?
Such a beautiful question. And I'm so glad that you're asking it because so many people feel that unless it is a spouse or a child or a parent, that there should not be grief. And you can have grief over anything. So many people lost aspects of their health with COVID, and it might not ever come back with respiratory or with some of the neurological challenges that have gone on. Careers. People lost entire careers during this time. And it might be something like a dream, having to put away a dream that you had. If you wanted to be a high school baseball star and you went through high school during this time, that might not have happened for you. A loss of a limb, having to leave someplace that you love dearly because you can't afford to stay there anymore. There's so many places, obviously pets too, but there's so many places that you can grieve. Grief really, it means hurting and pain and suffering that you're going through the loss of something that is very important to you. So it might not be a person, and it could even just be an object. I had a little cross that was my mother's, and it was made of mother of pearl. I wore it all the time, and it disappeared one time in the middle of the night. And I have searched the whole house again and again, gone under the carpet, done everything I can. And I don't know where it's went, but there was a grief that happened because I lost her when I was 10 and lost my mom. I was really sad for losing that connected piece of my history. So grief can come in many, many fashions. And for our listeners, whatever you are experiencing, if it is a deep pain, hurt, missing, that's grief. And let yourself explore what that means to you so that you can come through it in a way that's a little softer for yourself and your experience.
That's really great advice. And obviously, not everybody experiences grief in the same way. Not everybody handles and manages grief in the same way. So, what are some of the things that people could experience if they're experiencing a loss or grief?
Well, one of the things that I share with people is know that everybody has, in my opinion, the best intentions. When you're going through grief or loss and people are offering suggestions, or maybe they're saying you need to do it this way or you shouldn't be doing it that way, it can be very hard when you're the person who's trying to go through it and people are telling you you're not doing it right or you must do it this way when they're not going through the experience. And it can be disturbing. It's really important to hold on to. They're really wanting to help. They have best intentions. They really just might not know. And so what I found myself saying a lot when I went through the loss of my mom, and then I'm a widow, so the loss of my husband too, suddenly, is thank you very much for your concern, or thank you very much for your compassion. And then the very next important thing is to ask yourself, does this suggestion help me? Does this suggestion resonate with who I am and how I live my life? And many times you're going to find no, it doesn't. And that's okay, because it's actually a beautiful thing, because it gives you clarity to that doesn't work for me. Now, a lot of times in grief, we don't know what does work, because all we know is our life isn't working and we want our life to go back to what it was, and it can't, because of whatever has shifted or changed and is no longer here physically. But there's a place of asking yourself, what do I need? How do I help myself in this? And then that's a place that it's important to allow yourself. Grief is different for each person, and it's different for each loss. You don't grieve the same for a mother as you do a father, a sister as a brother, maybe the spouse to this spouse. It's different because it's that individual relationship. And so it's important that you take that time to let yourself find what it is that you're needing to help yourself in that. It's very personal. And though people have ideas of it should take this long or you should do it like this, be sure to honor yourself. After Ted died, people were telling me I needed to get online dating right away. And I knew there was no way, absolutely no way. For at least a year, I just needed to help my kids get through, and I needed to get through myself. So honor what it is that feels right to you.
That's powerful. And as you're talking about your own losses that you have experienced, would you say that grief really is more of a journey, or should you expect sort of set steps? Because they talk a lot about the stages of grief, and it sounds like they need to come in a certain order. But is that even realistic as we're talking about individual human beings?
I don't think so. And I think sometimes you go through them again and again, and some stages you'll stay in longer. I wasn't angry at God. I wasn't angry at the world. So I didn't go through that massive stage of anger. I was pretty angry at Ted for a little bit because he died from obesity. He had a heart attack. And to me, that was something that could have been chosen to be dealt with differently. But even my anger was very short. And I definitely didn't go into any kind of bargaining. That just is not me, but I know a lot of people do. I think most people will go through most of those stages, and I think it depends upon who you are and, once again, what the relationship is. Some losses are much, much, much deeper than others. You bring up another really important topic, which is grief doesn't end. It doesn't end. You move further away from the loss. You live life longer without that person or without that situation. So you start to recognize what life is without that, but you're still going to miss them forever. So on some layer, my mom's been gone for almost, I'm not even sure, 43 years, and I still miss her dearly, but I'm not crying over it every day. It's not that I'm not functional. So you do go through in the way that you need to. And sometimes you get caught and stuck in stages. One thing that, and I know they say it to try to help you, but they say you just have to get through that year. And once you get through that year, you've done it. And it's not true for most people. You get through the first year and you've done all the anniversaries and you feel like, okay, like I've done every year. I've done every aspect of the year. But then you get to the second year and it's a deeper ache, because now you're in the place of, so I've done it, and now I just have to keep doing this forever. And that's a hard one. So I look at, if it's a very important person or situation in your life, that I think it's longer than most people think. I think the difficult spaces is closer to 2 years. And I don't think people want to say that even into 3. And I don't think people want to say that up front because it sounds awful, but that second year is hard. So it keeps shifting. It keeps changing. You keep learning how to take care of yourself in different facets from what you've done before. That's really the key. It's not so much, in my opinion, solely do you go through these stages and how long does it take? It's really, what are you bringing into your life throughout these stages and throughout these months to create a new experience for yourself that does feel supported, that does feel cared for, that does feel that there's room for you to miss this person or this situation or this past reality in the now. And to me, that's the person who has really integrated into that place. I think it's unfortunate that we don't really talk about the naturalness of death. We make it something that shouldn't happen, doesn't happen. You need to be 95 and die in your sleep, or you shouldn't lose a career, or you shouldn't lose your portfolio. And that's not really true. There's so many times in life where it's just something that happens, or it's something that's created for you, or it's a tragedy that occurs. And we tend to believe we can control a lot of things we can't control, or dictate a lot of things we can't dictate. People kept saying that Ted was taken much, much too young. And I agreed. But at the same time, I was telling people, but I got him for almost 25 years. I had him for a long time. That's a long time. He lived 51 years. I lost a dear friend at 16. Who's to say that I wasn't blessed by Ted living as long as he did? There's a lot of babies that don't even ever come home from the hospital. So we have this strange view that people are to live forever, especially those that we love. And none of us are. None of us are. And I think that's part of the reason why the journey is so important, to treasure it and to bless it for yourself and for others as deeply as you can, because you have absolutely no idea. Both my mom and my husband, I came home to them having passed and left, not knowing that was going to happen. So it's important that you let yourself deepen the relationships that you have with yourself and with others, and enjoy the experiences as much as you can while we do have this day and while you do have this person or this situation.
Definitely a very deep appreciation of the things that we do have, and giving that gratitude, and also understanding that moving through grief might not be very realistic, but maybe instead considering it more like a reorientation of your life to come to a place where you can live with the changes that have happened. Maybe that's a bit more realistic than trying to actually just move through it and forget about it, since, like you said, that will not happen.
A lot of people say when you're going to be over it. And it's like, you don't get over someone you've loved. You bring up such great questions, because in the aspect of the newness, there is a place that's really important, and it's a hard one to, I think, embody. But there's the place of, what do you choose for your life to be now? And I think that's the place where there can be some big shifts. It's not going to be what you want, what you wanted. It's not going to be as you thought. And I think a lot of people feel, well, I just have to deal with this, whatever this is, and this is it. I'm now just a widow, or now I no longer can play baseball, so there's nothing. And it's not the aspect of, because this is taken away, now there's going to be this glorious blessing that falls upon your lap. It's not that. Maybe it is for some people, but for most people, it is not that. It's, I don't want to be in this. This isn't what I wanted. And how do I let myself grieve through that? And then beyond that, what does this life create? I remember telling my children shortly after their dad had passed over, I have no idea why your daddy was taken. I have no idea why, but I do know this. Who we are to be now must be different than it would have been if he had been here. Otherwise, there's no reason for him to pass. And so it'll be up to us to decide, how do we now live our life without him being here to guide us, to support us, to actively be involved, to shape us in that same way. And I told them, I'm not going to say it's going to be better. It probably will be in some aspects. We never bought pork rinds again. We didn't watch baseball all weekend long. I mean, there were some aspects that there was pleasure, but it was just different, because there's certain aspects that we're going to miss forever. We're going to miss them forever. And having a different life doesn't take that away. It's an interesting thing when you think about the different aspects of your life and the journeys that it takes and what you think it will be. And when it veers because someone either steps out of your life, or they pass, or they move, or they lose their cognitive abilities, and you're in that place of, oh my goodness, what is it going to be now? Then you step into many options. Your life really changes at any moment if you choose for it to change. And there's that place of saying to yourself, well, what will I do with this now? I vowed to myself that I would utilize what I had learned and what I had gone through to try to bless and help and support others. I didn't have to have that choice. I could have stayed in bed and decided I'd give up. But it depends upon what it is that you choose for yourself and how it best serves you. And you don't need to do anything. There is no right answer. The answer is, how do you live the life that you are now deciding to live in the way that honors you? There isn't a right way to grieve. There's just the way you choose. And whatever way you choose that, you're going to walk through it. So it's important to let yourself know, I'm just going to keep trying to figure this out. I'm just going to keep trying to find how to care for myself and care for those around me in a way that hopefully honors everyone who's in the process.
Yeah. And you raise an interesting point there. I think it is normal when we experience a sudden change or a change that we don't know how to cope with, or we didn't know was coming even. We experience some type of distress, and that could be even mental distress, like a depression or anxiety. But what happens if people get stuck in that distress, and what can they do to help themselves move out of that distress and actually start looking for options on how they can continue their lives?
First off, I would say don't be surprised if that happens. Just don't be surprised if that happens, because we go in a particular way that we get used to. And then that becomes the way that we are. And we think that's the way that it is to be. And sometimes that's fine. And then sometimes we start to realize this doesn't really work well. This is causing challenges because either I'm really sad and hurting all the time, or I'm no longer finding joy, or I'm losing too much weight, or I'm gaining too much weight, I'm drinking too much. I'm short with everybody. There can be lots of repercussions that come from this. There's the place to look at, do I feel that I'm coming back to any kind of experience that I can keep having? There's a woman that I have worked with for a little bit, and she's lost her husband, she's lost her best friend, and she just chooses, and I'm going to use the word truly, she's flooded with the feelings of sadness, she's flooded with the feelings of missing, and she chooses to stay there. And because of that, every single day is painful and hurtful and sad. And yet, when you share that with her, she knows that, but she's not really willing to move out of that. And so we don't work actively together because that's not a place for me to really help her that much until she chooses she wants something other than what this is. And that's okay if that's what she continues to choose, as long as she realizes that's what she chooses. But sometimes we realize this isn't the way I want to feel forever. Mindfulness, of course, is very important. Meditation is very important. Prayer is very important. There's support groups that connect to either divorce, you grieve a divorce, you're losing a child, losing a parent. There's lots of support groups. Obviously, there's therapy, there's coaching, there's lots and lots of books written about the topics and YouTubes. There's a plethora of information. So there's really no shortage. And there are lots and lots of places to connect with people. So it's more so giving yourself the opportunity to bring something new in. And the challenge that I'll offer to the listeners is, if you know that you are hurting, if you know that this is really painful and not working, there's a part of you that knows you want something other than that. So when you want something other than that, give yourself the opportunity to explore what that would be and what that could be. For some people, it's a creative release. For some people, it's simply getting out of the environment that they're in and seeing something different. For some people, it's some deep processing of that hurt and that pain and that suffering. I went to therapy in my early 20s because of the loss of my mom, and I was disowned after high school because I wasn't willing to go into business, which is what my dad wanted me to do. And I wanted to go off and be an actress. And so I was on my own to take care of myself. And I grieved the loss of that too. And that was important for me to do. So for me, the question is, in how you're feeling and how you're thinking, is this an experience that you want to continue having in this way? If it's not moving you in a direction that you know is taking you a little beyond, then you want to question what that is. And we all get stuck. We all get stuck because we have a belief, God doesn't love me. I'm not lovable. my life is going to be horrible. I've been cheated. It shouldn't be this way. I'm angry at anybody who has love. We all have those moments where thoughts like that might come up. And there's a place then to see if you can lessen the hold to that and move it to a little bit of a different place. This is not what I wanted, but this is what happened. How do I shift in this just a little bit? But be gentle with yourself because it's a little improvement. It's a little improvement. It's not a drastic. I feel like I've been wronged, cheated. My life has been ripped apart and it's horrible now. And oh, let's go be happy. I've got a new life now. It's a slow process of going step by step by step. The biggest piece for me is how do you talk to yourself? How do you love on yourself? And I think when we're in grief, we lose that pretty quickly. We lose that pretty quickly because we're now not getting from the other or from the experience. And I think we kind of drop the ball for a little bit of thinking about how do I take care of me simply because we're so focused on, I no longer have this help. I no longer have this support. I no longer have this experience. And I don't know what I'm like without. I remember when Ted died, I felt like I was walking around naked and I still had the wedding rings on, I was doing life, but he'd been in my life for almost 25 years. To have him not in my life, I knew I could do it and I knew I would do it because I needed to for my kids and for myself and for my clients. But he'd been in my life for so long, I didn't know what it felt like to not have him in my life. And that took a little while to come back to who am I? And I think we don't recognize how profound that is. Mm-hmm. I didn't lose myself in marrying Ted. I didn't. I was still very much me in so many ways, but because he was my partner, because he was my husband, because he was the one that I did life with, it had been 25 years since I had done life without him and on my own. And so just the aspect of having someone who's there to say, what do you think? Or what would you like to do? I can't even, there was like no word for it. It was just like, because all of a sudden, all the choices were upon me. And I missed having that person I missed everything, but I missed so much having someone to join. Simply just, would you like meatloaf tonight? Oh, that sounds great. I had someone who, with the little day-to-day routines, was cheering me on, but agreeing to or challenging me on. And all of a sudden now I needed to make all the decisions. And we had so many things go wrong, which happens to so many people. A friend of mine, I don't know if it's okay to cuss on this show, so I'm just going to say a friend of mine right afterwards said I was going through an SH blank T show. And I'm like, what's that? And she goes, it's what happens sometimes with severe grief. And it was awful. We almost died in a car accident in a blizzard. We lost internet for 3 days when I was trying to do everything that you need to do with a funeral. My water heater over flooded. My kids both, of course, were struggling. What else happened? Our cat drank antifreeze and we had to put it down a couple of months later. It was just like what? My daughter got injured where she lost her swim scholarship because of the car accident where we almost died. I'm like, what is going on? But a lot of times after grief, you'll just go through chaos. And I don't know if it's to keep you busy and not really focused on the grief, or if it's to show you life is really, really different. But I just remember I didn't feel like I quite knew how to do life without Ted. And it took me a long time to realize, yes, I did. But it feels different to go through life with a partner and to go through life without a partner. It just does.
Yeah.
It just does. And that's, got tears in my eyes right now saying it. That's a hard one. When you really love being a partner with someone, when you really love that person, it's a hard one to be like, wow, so now it's me. It feels a little, it's just different, but it's quite lovely, I think, to have someone who's with you, where you're on the same team. You've got each other's back and you want to make life beautiful together. I used to call Ted on a really tough day of work and I would say, just tell me you love me. He would say, what's wrong? And I'm like, no, 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 no. Just tell me you love me. He's like, sweetheart, what's wrong? I'm like, no, 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 no. Honey, just tell me you love me. He's like, why don't you know this? I'm like, I know it. I just want to hear it. And he'd say, I love you. I'm like, thank you. Bye. And they'd come home and he'd say, what's that about? And I said, I just wanted to hear it. I just wanted to hear it. And I remember the first day after he died, it was about a week and a half where I needed to hear it. And I looked at my phone and I just started sobbing. I thought, what do I do? And I remember calling my daughter, and bless her sweet, beautiful heart. It was a very dear phone call, but I wanted Ted. And that's a hard place because some things you just want that person or that reality or that possibility. I just want to go and hit that baseball in that game, or I just want to run if you've lost your legs. That's a hard place. That's a hard place to rectify. So be gentle with yourself. Be really gentle with yourself and realize it is up to you. And I mean this with love, not with, any kind of like harsh judgment. It is up to you to decide, how do you live life now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a beautiful opportunity, but it also can be kind of overwhelming. So you want to give yourself time to figure out what that is.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with our listeners and with me.
There's one thing that I'd love to pop in. You and I had talked about it when we first spoke over the phone the other day, which is I wish there was a way for us to do grief a little bit differently. And it's something that I've thought about quite a bit, and especially after you and I had our introductory call, which is if you're going through a severe loss and grief, and especially after the funeral, everyone kind of expects you just to jump right back into life. They bring you the casseroles, and a couple weeks later, they think everything should kind of be okay. And I know for me, I wished we could have just gotten through the funeral in that kind of stupor of going through the motions and then disappeared for a little bit and just really experienced our grief, our loss, our hurt, our sadness, and got into our bodies and got into our experience. And I didn't know to do that because I had never walked two children through losing their father. But my son started high school 3 days after their father died. And I went back to work 3 days after Ted died because I needed to make certain that I could provide for us because we were not prepared financially, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically for Ted to pass. But it would really be lovely if our world, and some companies do this where they'll have, a family grieving time. But I think it would, for some people, they'd have to ask themselves, like, do you want to stay in the home or do you want to leave? And for the kids and I think it would have been good if we had gone somewhere and just kind of figured out what life felt like a little bit now, and then came home and tried to reorganize. Some people don't want to. Some people would just want to stay in the home and stay there for that security. But I think for the kids and I, it would have been helpful for us to have had an experience where we could really, truly just grieve and not have to do all the aspects of life that seemed so insignificant. So it's something that I'm exploring, the possibilities of that, creating an opportunity for people to have a very safe, protective, loving, supportive environment, short, a couple of weeks, just to really help them go through what they're going through before they go back and then do all the things that you have to do to live in this world.
Well, that sounds like an amazing thought that you're having there. And I hope you come up with something that you can offer to your clients. That sounds wonderful. I think people experience grief in different ways. And so some people just want to stay really close to their family and keep the connection of the security and safety. And almost that makes it less real because those things all stay the same. But as you mentioned, some people, they manage much better if they have a little bit of space to take a breath, to reorganize, to just begin that healing process away from all the chaos that ensues after.
I had two friends that I would go into like wailing, crying every morning between 3 and 6 because my kids were sound asleep. And I'd sit in the bathroom and I would what came out of me sounded like Greek tragedy. And people were asking how I was doing. And it was brutal. It was really hard. And I remember saying to two friends, from 3 to 6 in the morning is absolute agony and hell. And they both got upset with me in love and said, why aren't you calling? And I remember saying to them, I thank you so much. I'm so grateful. And I know you're there. And I know I could call. And part of me really wants to. But as soon as we get off the phone and we hang up, I'm alone again. I just have to figure this out. I don't want to. I don't want this to be what I'm going through. But as soon as I hang up that phone, I got to deal with the fact that I am alone in the aspect of not having Ted.
Mm-hmm.
But what came out of my healing, and I think it comes out of so many people's healings, I hope it will happen for our listeners if it serves them, is to realize that you really aren't ever alone. We are really all connected and we are all in this world together. And there is an aspect of that global support and love if we allow ourselves to have it. It's really our mind frame that decides we're separate from. You don't have to be. I still send love to Ted all the time. I know he's not here in a physical body, but for me, he's very much present energetically, as is my mom. Doesn't mean I would prefer to have him here physically too, but energetically, it's really helpful if that's a place that is comforting for you to go. For some people, it's absolutely not. And dead is dead and it's over. And that's really how they can structure it within their mind frame. And if that's the case, let them have that because everyone needs to do it in their way. For me, it was really supportive to feel his love and his energy beyond life. And my daughter has that too. My son does not. We honor that difference. And it's important to be respectful there.
And you've used your own personal journey and the experiences that you have had to support clients through their grieving journey and through their healing journey. And do you want to go over some of the programs and services that you offer for our listeners so they can get a feel of how they could connect with you in their healing journey?
Oh, I'd be happy to. Thank you. So I'm sure it will be in the program notes, but my website is drheatherbrowne.com. So www.drheatherbrowne.com. And that's my website. And on there, obviously, there's ways to connect with me. And I offer a complimentary newsletter, which I send out with tips and techniques on life and living and communication and taking care of ourselves. There's also the tabs to my social media. I also offer workshops. I offer a monthly workshop and it's based upon what people are asking for. So I have capturing your joy. I have grief and loss. I have how to move back into communication after there's been an argument or a fight. So there's lots of different workshops that I offer. And then, of course, I do one-on-ones and couples work or family work. And so there's all the information that they would need for that, for coaching or for therapy or anything that they might desire. And if you have questions, I'm happy to pop on a phone call or send an email with some suggestions or resources that I might know that would be helpful. I am in America. I'm in California. So for the listeners who are in different countries, I won't know the specific places where you are, but I can certainly guide you in how to find them. And that's one thing when you've been a coach and been a therapist as long as I have, you kind of know where to look. And that can save people a lot of time of trying to do it all on their own when it can feel overwhelming. So feel free to reach out. If there's anything I can support with, I'd be happy to speak with anyone.
Amazing. And we will be linking to all of Dr. Heather's offerings in the show notes as well. So be sure to check there on how you can connect with her directly. And this has been another incredible episode. And I really hope our listeners have found this conversation supportive and profound as we journeyed into grief and loss today. It has been fantastic chatting with you on the podcast, Dr. Heather. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, I'm honored to be here with you all. And I just send right now in this moment so much love to each person who's listening and wherever you are on your life journey, your grief journey. I hope you just let yourself receive as much love as you possibly can. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you and take care. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen in. If you enjoy the Journey podcast, please subscribe, share on social media, and leave us a 5-star review. You can find more of The Journey on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and the Journey blog. Sending you love and courage, and see you next week.